Hello and welcome to Competition in the Age of Ecosystems, a two-day virtual event exploring the new realities of ecosystem-based competition. I'm Stuart Craner, co-founder of Thinkers 50 and director of the Business Ecosystem Alliance. This event is a partnership between the Business Ecosystem Alliance, Outthinker, Thinkers 50 and the Higher Management Institute. We are delighted that people from more than 50 countries have signed up, from Ethiopia to El Salvador, Australia to Finland. Thank you for joining us if you are with us live or watching a recording. A Mandarin translation is available for all of the sessions. In addition to the live sessions, there are a number of fantastic pre-recorded sessions which are also now available. These feature some great discussions on the impact of ecosystems in a number of business sectors, as well as leading thinkers and practitioners such as Rita McGrath, Tiffany Bover and Kayan Krippendorf. We especially thank Kayan and his team at Outthinker for their collaboration. As always, please let us know where you are joining us from and ask questions in the chat or question box at any time during the session. We really appreciate your insights and input. So let's get down to business. Our first session, Ecosystems at Work, is led by Janka Krings-Klebe, managing partner of CoShift and one of the leading contributors in Europe to greater understanding of business ecosystems. Janka is joined by three leaders from the ecosystem frontline: Andrea Contri, IoT Ecosystem Director at Higher Europe; Ank van Wylick, co-founder of 42 Collective; and Pernilla Isberg, Director of AstraZeneca's BioVentureHub. Thank you all for joining us, and over to you, Janka.
Thanks a lot, Stuart, and welcome everyone. Our session is going to dive deep into the practices of business ecosystems. I'm really looking forward to have great discussions with my panelists. They are all senior practitioners in the field of ecosystems. Just to set the stage, we are in the middle of a big shift. Companies are facing increasing complexity in their markets, combined with an ever-increasing dynamic. Customer needs are continuing to change very fast, driven by technological shifts, global disruptions of supply chains, and political turmoil. All this requires companies to become faster, more adaptive, and more innovative. Compared with the stable markets of the past 50 years, the 21st century now is evolving into an entirely new business environment. But many companies are still stuck in 20th century strategies, requiring stable market conditions to prosper. Managers now run into problems because their strategies and management practices are failing in the new age. The winners in this new age understand that competition now is all about flexibility, collaboration, and innovation across companies. They heavily invest in business ecosystems to secure their future. In doing so, they discover that new practices and working strategies are necessary. There's much to learn from the pioneers of business ecosystems. Therefore, I'm really delighted to have so many ecosystem practitioners in this session with me. I'm sure that there's much to learn from them about ecosystems and at work. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce Ank van Wylick. Ank has a long career centered around innovation execution in various sectors, ranging from banking, the food industry, and telecoms. She was 10 years a partner at PA Consulting Group and KPMG, where she successfully developed open global innovation ecosystems with clients such as AkzoNobel, Ahold Delhaize, and Johan Cruyff Arena. The passion for bringing ecosystems execution to the next level has triggered the setup of a new venture, 42 Collective, where Ank and her co-founders are on a mission to create breakthroughs in ecosystems. So I would just like to hand over to you, Ank. The stage is yours, and I'm really looking forward to your insights.
Thanks, Janka. Thanks for the introduction, and congratulations, Stuart, on another great event. It's really a privilege to be in this fantastic group of people who all have a passion for ecosystems. Well, the key statement of my presentation today is actually that we believe that the world needs more innovation value chain ecosystems to address cross-organizational issues. Organizations can do more to solve societal and business issues simultaneously in an ecosystem which is centered around your own organization. So my question at the end is actually, what can we do more of together? And as Janka said in the introduction, I've been doing a lot with open innovation and building ecosystems for companies. We've helped companies find good solutions for issues they wanted to work on with others. In the meantime, build their own innovative brands. For example, I'm still very proud on AstraZeneca, where we've helped them build Paint the Future, and they've now turned this global R&D focused initiative in concrete innovations in Brazil, China, and now India. This is just one example. Well, talking about ecosystems, I'd like to clarify what we mean by this. I prefer it actually to call it ecosystem archetypes rather than giving a definition. We as 42 Collective, we distinguish 4 archetypes: internal, external, value chain, and societal ecosystems. Let me just explain them with an example. Recently, we've been helping companies in the cement industry. The cement challenge is huge, as 8% of all carbon emissions is caused by this sector. The level of innovation for replacement products is still much lower than, for example, in energy, where we've seen innovations in solar, wind, etc. And the strong and growing demand for cement is not helping either. So our first ecosystem archetype is internal ecosystem. Organizations also in the cement industry, they bring their employees together to sparkle new ideas and share best practices. Typically, you can harvest ideas with a horizon 1 characteristic. But in the second archetype, we see companies attempting to find and work with and create deals with solutions outside the company. We call this external innovation. This second archetype is a widespread type today. We will hear a lot about this today as well from AstraZeneca and higher. And in the cement industry, we see organizations, for instance, experiment with injecting CO2 in the product and get stronger cement. Sounds like a win-win, right? Well, the third type, and I guess now we're moving from more the me and my company to we in a broader ecosystem. The third type is the value chain ecosystem. This is wider than the supply chain. There are 2 main drivers for growth in this area. Well, first of all, sustainability and the need to innovate the core. Well, the sustainability requirements, they go beyond the boundaries of your organization. So as an example, if you are a retailer, you want to see less plastic in the store, then the whole chain from chemical company working on bio-based materials to granulate producer, molding company, up until the end producer has to act. Well, the other drive I mentioned is business performance. Organizations are increasingly forced to innovate their core business. This means finding new business models, also beyond their mental models. And as cement companies, you can, for instance, take a wider role in the building industry by collaborating with alternative building materials companies like wood or software companies. Well, and this morning I read to a World Economic Forum that, for instance, more effort in cross-sector collaboration is needed to help homeowners produce their own energy. These are just a few examples, there are many more, and many more action is needed. Well, the need for value chain innovation ecosystem is particularly important when the distribution of revenue, costs, and risks over different value chain partners is changing or needs to change. I recently actually saw an excellent example from field to market, a US-based ecosystem party in agriculture, and they realized that the entire value chain must take steps to achieve more regenerative agriculture. However, the solutions, they involve different investments and also risks. So they help the sector on working out finance options, for instance, with insurance, where collective share the risk together. Well, in a societal ecosystem, that's the fourth type, we see higher or societal goals put at the center of the initiatives, and multiple parties, often also governments and policymakers, are joining in. A nice example here is the Holy Grail initiative, where 160 companies have committed to improving packaging recycling using digital watermarks. Well, here concrete solutions are implemented together, and this goes beyond knowledge networks that we quite see a lot also in the cement industry. Well, a few things on performance. I have a full slide with KPIs, but decided to leave it out. Just drop me a note and I will send it to you directly. So I'd say we can do more. We can do more and differently. Internal ecosystems should not only look at new ideas, but also cross-team collaborations established, new connections established. External ecosystems, they score deals, but I'm often not impressed by the number of deals. So some corporates are super happy to award 3 vague prizes. Well, that's just not enough to build a strong, innovative brand or become the preferred partner for green tech solutions. So also actually in societal and value chain ecosystem, then is still much more to be done. And to speak with Ron Adler later here today, it's important to take a wider lens. So we need more. Finally, I would say there's 2 examples that are good to know from a value chains perspective. Imagine it's an initiative led by Paul Polman, the former CEO of Unilever. And this initiative strongly believes in aligning and committing CEOs. And the other initiative is the Breakthrough Energy initiative. Breakthrough Energy is actually from Bill Gates. And they state, and I like that idea, that the world needs more implementation projects from green tech solutions. More implementations decrease the green premium, because most green tech solutions are actually expensive at the start, and getting a positive business case is therefore challenging. The more implementations, the lower the green premium, the higher the societal impact. Well, I'm really interested to see the results and when they share it with the world. So I'm coming now to the end of my presentation. As I said, we need more innovation value chain ecosystems to address cross-organizational issues. That has to do with the desire to both improve on business and societal performance. In order to improve the business performance, we need to cooperate more pre-competitively and bring wider capabilities to the organization. And to create societal impact, we need to implement more green tech solutions. And this will only work if we do this in a value chain and solve some chicken and egg problems. So let's take actually the responsibility to drive change across the chain. Let's do more beyond pledging, but action, please. That's the whole idea. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ank, for your great insights. One short question from me would be, as you have accompanied and observed many companies in their innovation efforts, what do you think is the main challenge that their managers have to overcome to embark on ecosystems? What is helping them to overcome this challenge?
That's a very, very good question. What I see a lot of organizations struggle with is the layer in the middle of the organization. Top managers, they pledge. They are really they are really positive about driving change in business models and also ecological, societal. Lower in the organization, I see that there are many enthusiastic people who would like to contribute, but somewhere in the middle, there people are at risk. They fear for their careers and have other challenges at their tables. So I think that's the important challenge: how to involve the middleman.
Thanks a lot, Ank. Okay, so I would like to have more insights. So I would like to hand over to our next speaker, Andrea Contri. Andrea is in charge of IoT ecosystems at Hire Europe. And he's leveraging the connected appliances to enrich the customer experience by moving beyond product features and into smart home scenarios and jobs to be done. Haier is well known for its exceptional business model and transformation history, opening their internal ecosystem to external partners, creating a multitude of highly dynamic and entrepreneurial companies. Andrea, we are eagerly awaiting your insights from working in such an ecosystem.
Thank you very much, Janka. Yeah, so I bring the perspective of, let's say, business practitioner inside the European branch of Haier. We are part of course, the leading manufacturing, appliance manufacturing company in the world, and we operate throughout Europe primarily through the Haier, Hoover, and Candy brands. We are a generalist white goods manufacturer, but that's only the beginning of the story. As mentioned, the key element that we are leveraging to try and move beyond the white good itself is the connectivity, the fact that we now almost the entirety of the production that we have of new appliances is now connected when it reaches the consumer and the market, primarily through a Wi-Fi chip. This is a small technological improvement that is actually bringing in a world of possibilities. One of the mantras that we have at Haier Europe and Haier in general is zero distance to consumer. The idea that we don't really start thinking about the product in the traditional sense, starting from the factory and what the constraints are and what the limitations are of what product can be brought to market, but rather we look into the eyes of the consumer, we try to get into their shoes, and we try to build something that is really starting from their needs and from what they are trying to do inside their home. One interesting piece that I always talk about when we try and develop ecosystem initiatives is try to picture your consumer moving through the physical rooms in their homes. Sometimes they're in the kitchen. Why are they there? They are trying to prepare a meal. Some of this involves touching and physically interacting with one of our ovens, but some of it doesn't. You have to pick what type of meal to prepare. You have to set up a lot of stuff on your counter and cut it up and prepare it. Some of it will go on a hob, some of it will go into the oven, some of it will go into different appliances built by different producers. The interesting piece is in all of this is that if we shift the perspective from being the device itself into the job to be done of the consumer and into what they are trying to achieve, we are now part of a much bigger environment. And that's where we can start building ecosystems. So the idea is that by having our devices that can be connected, they not only can interact remotely with the consumer, but they can also be leveraged to talk to other devices and to be part of broader journeys. An interesting example of this, I'll bring one from China and then I'll touch on one from Europe. In China, there is the interest for end consumers in their homes to consume Beijing duck, which is a delicacy dish that needs a very complex set of preparation steps and a very professional equipment to do it in the best restaurants. The idea that Haier brought to the table was to try and make available all the necessary ingredients and the steps and the instructions to cook the Beijing duck inside of our ovens by having, for example, a supply chain of players that are locally available that can provide to you the already pre-prepared dish so that you can just do the finishing touches inside your oven locally. This went very much beyond just selling the hardware to the consumer and actually moving into what were they trying to achieve? Were they trying to get a premium dish at home that they can prepare themselves, and setting up a lot of collaborations and industry partnerships with logistics, retailers, chefs, and different steps of the value chain to make it happen and make it available. And this is a good example of an ecosystem where you start from the purpose and you build around it. From Europe, something we have done, we have a very strong presence in the wine cellar market. We sell a lot of wine coolers. Wine coolers are an interesting gateway into a world of passion for consumers. Some of them really love taking care of their collection of wines. You purchase the wine cellar because it enables you to preserve a lot of interesting, valuable bottles that bring with them a lot of experiences. And so we decided to try and track this collection digitally, and through our mobile application, we are providing a seamless way to quickly scan the label of a bottle and add it to your virtual collection, and therefore keeping track of your wine journey. This is something we realized by having a lot of conversation with real consumers who were interacting with their products. And we quickly realized that we could move beyond just doing something that has to do with your product. And we really started building a community of passionate wine lovers and users, and providing them with experiences that go beyond just storing and tracking wine. So now it is possible through our app to purchase more wine. It is possible to get access to accessories and wine glasses and decanters and all the stuff that you need to really become more like a sommelier inside your experience. We have a lot of extra content that is being brought by different players that do, for example, wine reviews, or that do industry news and the discovery of new vineyards. We have the ability to book a tasting session in the Tuscany region in Italy as part of the experience, and so on and so forth. This is something that could have happened independently of being a hardware appliance manufacturer, but actually it made sense to start from the physical wine cooler and then move this into a digital virtual space. And the interesting step is that now this application is available even for consumers who did not buy our product. We moved away from this just being a companion of the physical product, and it is available for users who don't have a virtual physical wine cellar, but maybe store their wine in their cellar, or that they have some wine cellar from a different brand. But we are driving, starting from their passion and from their sense of community as the entry point. So the purpose for us of building these ecosystems was very much to get access to a different set of perspectives and having a speed of execution and adaptability to change that really follows the needs and the experiences that the consumers go after. And in order to get this going, we are actually collaborating a lot with early stage startups. We have a very interesting startup partnership collaboration plan in France called Higher Ideas. And we have also set up an investment company that is able to leverage capital investments in such earlier stage players if their offering is complementary to the ones that we're doing. So we really want to try and start aggregating several ecosystems around our experiences and making sure that we can be an interesting hub for the access to the final consumer, to enable more players around the value chain or around shared experiences like the wine tasting to become a part of this conversation and to play a network game where each player that joins gets more value than they would have if they had built the same experience individually.
Thanks a lot, Andrea, for your very interesting insights into Higher and their ecosystem setups. So my question to you would be also on leadership. You have worked for several companies before you started working at Higher. How did your view of management change when you dived fully into ecosystems?
Thank you very much for the question. This is really a revolutionary company in that this inversion of the point of view, not starting from the company's needs, but starting from the user needs, is really what is changing the management style. It's a cultural transformation. It's a process, of course, and a lot is about breaking existing mindsets and making it possible to reason in a different way. But more and more, the company is trying to build what we call micro enterprises, which are smaller organizational units that are driven by the end user needs as opposed to the optimization of the company processes. And so this is forcing us, when we try and design and develop ecosystem experience like the wine one, if we already from day one start discussing how could this be a small independent entity inside the organization? What are the resources that are needed? What is the type of commitment that we want to encourage? What are the type of entrepreneurial mindset that we want to leverage from our employees? Is something that is really changing the way you shape the project. It's not a project, it's a small company in itself at this point. And a lot of the resources needed, the physical product, the IoT connectivity layer, are made available by the broader mother company, but are very nimbly accessible by those smaller teams in a way that makes it possible to self-organize and at the same time keep low the coordination costs of accessing. So a lot of my job day to day is trying to foster decentralization and a lot of local initiatives, for example, in different European markets, and say, why don't we try and build this? And then figuring out after the fact, how can we enable this to scale? How can we enable this to grow? How can we turn this into something stable and profitable and valuable for the end consumer? But it's really the other way around as opposed to a centralized decision-making that is all top-down.
Oh, thanks a lot. I think we will come back to that point again. Now I would like to hand over to Pernilla, who she's already here with us, and great to have you here. Pernilla Isberg is COO at AstraZeneca BioVentureHub. She is a pharmacist by training with many years' experience of working in the pharma industry. AstraZeneca's BioVentureHub has recognized as one of the most novel industry incubators in the world by the Medici Group, offering a new approach to catalyze collaborative innovation. And at the heart of the AstraZeneca R&D site in Gothenburg, BioVentureHub gathers more than 30 scale-up companies representing the tech, pharma, and ICT sectors at the same location to create a unique innovation ecosystem. So Pernilla, how does it feel being COO of such an amazing innovation ecosystem? Please tell us about your insights.
I will tell you about the insight. I can tell you I have one of the most fun jobs in the world, to start with that. And I will try to explain why, and we'll show you a story about how we operate. I will give you some slides and background, how we operate and why. Thank you for the nice introduction. And that's we are in the BioVentureHub. It's what we say is maybe we will recognize as one of the most novel incubator, but what we would like to claim that we are more like an ecosystem rather than a fixed term of a short-term incubator setting. And why, I will explain you in a bit. So I will tell you a little bit about why we set up this BioVentureHub. And the background is, of course, our industry. I'm representing AstraZeneca, a global pharmaceutical company developing medicine globally for patients with cardiovascular diseases, respiratory, oncology, rare diseases, and immunology, etc. And by doing so, our industry is a little bit different than others. To develop one medicine, it takes about 10 to 15 years. And someone calculated that to produce one product on the market costs $2.6 billion. It's a massive amount of money. And the reason is like the long-term time it takes to invest in this, but also the number of projects we need to start and run quite far in order to find the perfect one. And one other interesting aspect is the one who pays for our product is not the end consumer, is the government, or it could be insurance company. And that also regulates how we operate and can manufacture and market our drugs. And interestingly enough is that the end user, the patient, doesn't want our product. They don't want a pill. They want medicine. They want health. So with that in mind, our industry is different, but it's also an industry that is in huge change. And on this picture, you can see AstraZeneca's R&D sites. We are a global pharmaceutical company, as I said, but we have a few locations in the world where we do research. And one of those is in Gothenburg, West Coast, Sweden, and that is highlighted on the screen. And that is where we have our BioVentureHub. I will show you in a bit how it's operated. So the life science industry in a change that depends on the great pull of the requirement. We have the patient that are, and with a lot of chronic diseases, it pushed a lot of cost. That together with a very, very prepared or informed patient who would require greatness of their health, and that together with a lot of that cost a lot, and that also together with our precision medicines will push or pull the change in our industry. And from the push side, you see a lot of investment in the tech industry. A lot of investment are really pushing the type of product that we need to invest and solve the problem for future. The products are more integrated. It will not be enough with one pill any longer. It's about an integrated solution where you combine the pill with a digital or diagnostic or medtech solution. And this is how the journey for a patient looks like. We're going from a sick care perspective, a more sort of reactive way of act to a more proactive way of act when it comes to healthcare. And that means we have different types of players, different type of partners in order to solve and develop this kind of new type of product, a more integrated type of product. And with that, the innovation take place, not any longer only in the R&D setting, it takes place also closer and more closer to the end user, the patient. So our marketing company or our marketing representatives are more closer to the connection to where the innovation need to happen. So AstraZeneca started the BioVentureHub 7 years ago, and this is really a different public-private partnership models, intention to really catalyze innovation, but also to support the growth of smaller companies in life science industry by tapping into our own already available infrastructure and knowledge. And this is also a sort of a platform for us as a company to work with innovation in a new way. We need to think about and work more how we can use the explorative way of working, thinking about solving tomorrow's problem rather than today's. So that's the aim of this platform. And it's also about integrating the different compartment of the future product of healthcare. We have drug companies as ourselves, it's devices companies, diagnostic companies, and diagnostical companies. And all of us have different type of value chains. As I said, the drug company take 10 to 15 years to develop one medicine, whereas a digital company takes like a couple of months, maybe up to a year to develop the product. Totally different value chain. How do you partner? How do you make the most of your collaboration? So the fundamental concept of the BioVentureHub is really to be on a physical place, working with proximity, and combining drug companies, medtech, digital, and diagnostic together with a non-competitive and complementary philosophy and a way of working. So as a circle here, symbolizing our culture, the way we work, experimental, networking with transparency. We sometimes say that the currency in the BioVentureHub is not dollars, it's sharing domain expertise. And we share knowledge and not data or any confidentiality in the way that you normally do, or at least foresee. So we don't want to write any CDAs. We would like to have an openness and share culture. So with that, we select companies of complementary nature that have their IP in place, the finance in place. So we focus on scale up and not startups. And with that, they need to buy into this culture and really co-locate at our site. So there's some facts about the hub, as we call it. It's been here like for 7 years. We got funding from a public sector, from Vinnova, VGR, the innovation agency in Sweden, helping us to share the risk and helping AstraZeneca to support others outside ourselves. And what makes us really unique is 3 things. It's how it's integrated to research sites. So it's really, as you as an external company, part of the BioVentureHub, as Janka mentioned, now 33 companies already here, and 3 academic units. You have the same access to the site as I as an AstraZeneca employee, and they can tap into knowledge exchange and infrastructure with support from me as one of the driver in as its hub. And another thing that makes it unique, we focus on scale up, not startup, and we integrated the 4 different types of we call it the 4D, the different type of companies. And for some final words, how we operate as a local ecosystem. The company themselves are organizing their own ecosystem by supporting each other and complement to each other. If they have a need, they come to us. We sometimes joke that we are sort of a scientific Tinder. We match them with competence within AZ in terms of knowledge exchange and evaluating business opportunities as well. But these companies are not selected because AstraZeneca would like to buy them or acquire the company or have require anything of their IP. They are there because they add something to the ecosystem. Competencies, knowledge, use, etc. We have partners that support the ecosystem with knowledge in terms of medtech, digital, complementary to ourselves. We focus on sustainability, support the company in sustainability, and kind of certification from green certification. We also work closely with our neighbor. They're actually building an ecosystem, life science ecosystem next door. And the companies will, when they move out from our facilities, will move to a broader ecosystem that are in building and they'll be ready to move in next year. So with that, well, I think the final word why AstraZeneca has started this, it was not about the monetary return on investment directly, but it's about exposing our colleagues for entrepreneurship, scientific, other type of knowledge, foster a culture. I think that is the main thing here. We have been it's more a culture program than a technical project. And it's a project that still is evolving and changing and adopting for future. But of course, we had a lot of example how we create value, a lot of collaboration between AstraZeneca and the companies themselves. So I'm happy to take any questions going further.
Thanks a lot, Pernilla, for your insights into the BioVentureHub. I have a question waiting for you. This is, what was or still is the biggest challenge of you as a COO, orchestrating such a diverse ecosystem? How did this affect your leadership style?
I mean, as my leadership style and how we operate is really about the proximity that we talked about, to be close, to listen and understand the needs. They needs is both AstraZeneca and the companies to optimize the collaboration we can make together, to be close, listen, operate, but also to encourage them to take their own step, take their own initiative, to reach out their hand or reach out to who they would like to meet. But also, as we pointed out earlier here, the importance of for the organization itself to take step to use this platform as much as possible in terms of invited interesting companies to these opportunities, because it's about the co-creation opportunities to work in a different way together, sort of before you sign a contract, before, in a new type of philosophy, how you get to know each other and learn from each other. So it's so much untapped opportunities. Even though we've shown so many values during the last 7 years, we can do so much more, I think.
Thanks a lot, Pernilla. This raises another question for me, and I would just include my both other panelists into this question as we're starting the discussion. I imagine there are lots of challenges in co-creating value, capturing value, sharing value in an ecosystem setup. What are the challenges that you faced, and how did you solve at least some of them? Maybe Andrea.
Thank you. In the consumer environment that we operate in, one of the key challenges across the different players of the ecosystem is how to track the consumer engagement across different systems. If someone works and lives on my app, do I share this information about what they do with the wine merchant or with the experience provider? If they then go and have a trip in Tuscany, as mentioned, etc., how do we learn that this has happened and has created value? and has created an interesting experience for them that can be then replicated and built. So a key part of this is being clear on what are the engagement tracking KPIs that you want to share with different partners. And this really is challenging because different players have different priorities which shift over time. So sometimes someone wants to monetize, someone else wants to have loyalty for the consumers which are already theirs. And so a lot of it is about being clear up front about what we want to measure. But on the other hand, keeping a flexible mindset and making sure to revise frequently in order to adapt and challenge the types of KPIs that were set at the early stages of a collaboration. Mm-hmm. So for me, the key solution piece here is to be very willful in setting up periodic moments of discussion and review with the partners and the players in the ecosystem so that you can touch base on what were the original expectations for the collaboration and what is the value that is coming out of it and how it is evolving as the consumer behavior evolves.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot, Andrea. Next question from the participants. Are there any industries where ecosystems don't apply or work? What would you think, Ank?
Any industries where ecosystems don't apply
or don't work?
Yeah, actually, we see ecosystems develop when there is uncertainty and an increased pace, need for pace, I should say. So if you're in an industry without pace, where everything has been unchanged for 100 years and will be for the next 100, then you might not consider an ecosystem. But when there's a lot of uncertainty, when the need for change is increasing rapidly, when there are more possibilities with technology, then you just need a different approach. And I really like the approach that Pernilla just said about experimentation, the proximity, the openness, and also, yes, the transparency about it. So that would be my answer.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. And next questions to Pernilla. How can we ensure that ecosystems actually make money? Collaboration is great in a certain way, but making a profit is important. So this also sharing the value.
Yeah, and sometimes you can argue what the benefit could be reputational and PR, and it could also be like you via this creating even more business that you have done. So I mean, to the KPIs, as Ank talked about, it could be hard to measure directly, but to be, I mean, the business and other things that is very important, and there have been some research about our hub and others, and the level of, how much, in order to create more value for, you can't only create an ecosystem, but that you would like to gain something yourself, you need to give. So the balance of giving and supporting is so delicate, and it's so important. So to attract value yourself in the end and create even more, I think the basic is it might take time to develop the perfect ecosystem, but it's important to recognize you need to be giving in order to expect to get, but to get to the question how you can generate money. I think it's about the long-term investment in terms of ourselves. I mean, our vision for our ecosystem is really the long-term investment to create problem or solve problem for the future and expose it and from different value chain. I think that's it for long time. In the long run, you will earn your money, but it might take some time. But you get more other type of value than the money, like culture and people. Expose and attract people and employee, etc., just by being such a good partner. That's my belief.
Thanks a lot. And there is a question for Andrea from the participants. I'm curious whether the digital space around wine is considered an enabler of the core business or also a standalone business. You mentioned that those without the wine cooler can also participate in the digital space. How does Hire monetize this?
Thank you. It's, of course, it's an evolving business model, but primarily the idea is that in this case, if we can act as the coordinator or the hub or the central point to aggregate the different consumers that are passionate about wine, there is value to be driven to them and therefore to be extracted for us and our partners in making sure that there are as many engaged and segmented and profiled consumer in this space in our app as possible, and giving access of this to the different players in the ecosystem, and trying to activate as many network effects as possible so that the value that the other players bring increases the value of the pie in general. And so in this case, we are at the center of an ecosystem where we're trying to act and orchestrate as an orchestrator, and eventually some money is coming directly from the consumer. Some of it will come from providing an infrastructure or a place to be and to aggregate around directly from other partners. In other cases, it makes more sense to join ecosystems that are developed by someone else. For example, in the smart home for us, a big play was being compatible with Alexa or Google Assistant, the smart home assistant, smart voice assistants. It's a big feature set that we cannot develop on our own because we don't have a lot of R&D expenditure in voice, or at least we cannot do it at the same level as a Google or as an Amazon. But at the same time, we get value by being in this conversation when the consumer knows how to issue orders to, be it a light bulb or a washing machine.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot, Andrea. And here's another question coming in. Isn't there a danger that we are using the language of ecosystems to explain things like open innovation, which have been around for a while? Is a term ecosystem actually adding value? Pernilla or Ank?
Ank, maybe. I mean, for me, it's more like an organism that when it's working and you're helping each other, you see the synergies. You know, independently what it's called, it doesn't matter for me. But I mean, you, Ank, you have more done the research perhaps in the background.
Well, I agree. Actually, there are similar words to actually sort of relate to each other. So you have open innovation, ecosystems, we had partnering, networking. So, we can have a lot of debates about, the precise definitions. I'd say, yeah, open innovation is still the verb that's still valid. Ecosystem is more of the place where it's currently happening.
Okay, thanks a lot. We are slowly coming to the end of our session time. I think we learned a lot from you about ecosystems at work. So one final question from me. When you think of those leaders who are still hesitating whether ecosystems could work for them, what would be your final statement? Or what would be your call for action to them? Ank, maybe you start.
Where do you want to make the difference in your value chain? Just think about it. How is your value chain changing, and where do you take the lead? That would be my, I would definitely ask them to do that.
Thanks a lot. Andrea?
So for me, two things. One is try. Experiment, set up a small budget and do it on a small scale and see if it works out for you. If relinquishing some of the control is actually something that might or might not work for you, but try. It doesn't really cost too much to have an experiment going. And secondly, because fear is a powerful motivator, if you don't do it this way, someone else will, and normally comes and unbundles or disrupts your industry or your business model more quickly than you. So even just a small investment in being nimble and adaptable might make you more resilient to competition.
Thanks a lot. Pernilla?
Yeah, I can echo what they said this previously, and I would like to inspire others to just think about opportunities where you think it's too early to partner, but maybe that might be something there, you know, and in this case, our infrastructure and our arena is really there to co-create and see and tap into if there are opportunities to explore. So for me, the ecosystem that we are running is tap into before you partner, and it's a little bit too early, there you get something that might be opportunities to try out via an ecosystem or an open innovation platform.
Thanks a lot, Ank, Andrea, Pernilla, for sharing your experiences and insights. And thanks a lot for this great discussion. Goodbye from my side. It was a pleasure to be here and moderating this great round of practitioners. And I hope you enjoyed this session. Maybe we'll meet in one of the other sessions today or tomorrow. So goodbye from my side and have a wonderful day or evening and see you soon.